This is the podcast between an old school mentor and a digital mentee on managing and/or working with people, navigating a career, growing profits, and not killing your coworkers along the way. Now let's join the consultant, Hayden Shaw, and the millennial who fixes Hayden's iPhone, Seth Tower Hurd.
It's the consultant and the millennial. This is a show about growing in marketing management and not killing your coworkers along the way. He's Hayden Shaw. He's helped over 30,000 managers, including a lot of big companies, a lot of small companies, and a lot of nonprofits and other organizations along the way. My name is Seth Tower Hurd, and my company is called Digital Profit Farm. We do websites, social media management, and podcasts that reach more than 70,000 people every single month. And although, this show sort of started as a mentor-mentee type of thing, I am the one who is the millennial of the consultant and the millennial, and yet I'm the one that's more pessimistic about millennial employees in general than Hayden is. And Hayden, has done a lot of work in the business world around, generations in the workplace. And so we thought we'd do an episode about why I'm cranky and why a lot of managers are cranky, even now that we have this, elder millennial, younger millennial split, and why that is.
Right.
I don't think I felt like this 2 years ago.
Well, I think some of it has to do as well, and we tend to avoid politics on this, but I think some of it has to do with politics, business, and economics. And so while you did a lot with journalism, you also were history and business in school. And so,
I hold dual master's degrees in business and political theory. That's not a joint program. Like you can do an MBA and a law degree. I just was able to get grad school for free twice. So those are the two things I did in my 20s.
Right. And so because of your frustration with how some millennials understand economics, especially some vocal ones, I think that adds to it. So we thought, I know in one of the past episodes we mentioned, hey, we ought to do an episode on why Seth is more frustrated with the millennials than I am. And even though you are the elder statesman of the millennials.
Do you count it as starting in 81, 82, what year you were born?
Yeah, I count it as 80.
80? Okay. So I'm the third year of the millennial generation.
You bet. Now, and Pew Research Center officially declared that they start millennials in 96.
Oh,
so, according to so some people who start millennials earlier, you would be a good chunk in,
okay.
So you'd be 7 years in. Gallup and I and others put you at the beginning of it. So either way.
Okay. Well, this is an especially vital topic when we're looking at such a low unemployment rate, which, is great for the economy. It's great if you're an employee because you have a lot of options. It's not necessarily great if you're a manager or you want to keep people because people have a lot of options. And so,
you got a lot of options now. You bet.
Yeah. There's always something that's going to take more attention. And when the economy's bad, you got to focus more on sales and providing value and getting out there and getting it done. And when the economy's good, you got to realize that you could very quickly find yourself with no people. You could see teams disintegrate very quickly.
Yes, I with different clients, I'm watching teams disintegrate quickly. And how do you find people? Is a big question, especially in manufacturing. Matter of fact, I posted something a couple of months ago to LinkedIn on how do you find people in manufacturing, where it's probably the hardest.
Okay. And now that a lot of baby boomers we're at the tail end of baby boomers being in the workplace, right? Good way to say it. They got a few years left. You're a cusper, right? So you're between baby boomers and Generation X.
55. Yeah, I'm 55. I'm halfway between the boomers and the,
Okay.
Everybody says they're going to work till they're 70, but most people actually do retire around 65.
Do they?
As soon as they can get Social Security, they tag in.
Okay. I guess it's different because I plan on starting more companies than just this one, but I don't have any plans to retire, period. To me, the point is just to make enough money that you're mainly doing the stuff you really like. And then you just, I think I mentioned on the podcast before, I grew up around a guy that started his 11th bank at 96 years old, wore a 3-piece suit to work every day. Huge inspiration on my life. in Pike County, Illinois, where there's only 14,000 people. This guy was just super entrepreneurial. And that sounds like fun to me. I don't really think that retirement sounds like nearly as much fun as not retiring.
You are a good man.
So baby boomers.
The older I get, the older I get, the more semi-retired sounds good to me.
Okay. So baby boomers are tapping out at 65, which means, that also means there's somewhat of a leadership vacuum, I would say. And there's just a bodies vacuum. Like, you don't want to hire too fast and have somebody in there and be like, oh my gosh, why did I do that? But at the same time, I mean, if you're a company or a team, even, a team of 20 to 50 people and 5 people retire, you can probably absorb it. 5 more people retire, whether that's the whole company or just a division. And all of a sudden you are in a desperate place where the wheels really start falling off.
Well, there are 3 things that people, I think, that are biggest challenges that organizations have regarding generations in general. And the first one is, how do you find people? Then how do you keep them? Put that into one package. What do you do with knowledge transfer? Because you're right. Not only do you have the challenge of you got 4 boomers retire in a 2-year period of time, but tacit knowledge is the big issue. Tacit knowledge is the knowledge that you just know. That you wouldn't even think to explain to somebody else. You just know how to get things done. And tacit knowledge takes 5 to 7 years for a person to capture. And since the average person, the Bureau of Labor Statistics makes 3 years long-term employment. So when you see figures on long-term employment for the federal government, that's 3 years. So the average person stays in a job a little less than 3 years, regardless of generation. Now, admittedly, younger generations skew that a bit lower because older generations tend to stay a little longer. Younger generations move more often. But how do you pass on that knowledge, and how do you do knowledge transfer is probably the biggest thing that's going to sneak up on organizations. And then how do you motivate people? How do you become a manager that younger generations? I know you're now an elder statesman millennial, but younger, new hires, people who have a lot more flexibility to leave. Don't have a mortgage, aren't settled in, that kind of thing. And how do you keep them interested, regardless if they're millennials or if they're the newest generations I call the connectors?
And so here's, so the connectors are the Gen Z.
Yeah, Gen Z. Like we talked about before, Z's kind of a awkward little name. First of all, we're out of letters. And secondly, no one wants their grandkid in AA. And so that's an awkward one.
Okay. Well, let me get into, I guess, where my frustration came from, because, I'm thinking that in the next year, hopefully, we add a full-time employee to the business, that so far has been, myself, Amanda helping me, and then freelancers. So there's not been, I have not had a full-time quote unquote employee, right? So what I have become increasingly frustrated with is, and this also comes from the fact that I've taught college, right? So I'm an elder millennial who's taught a good bit of college to younger millennials, and what I would call like the entitlement mentality, if we want to hit all the stereotypes, the entitlement mentality, the snowflake mentality, whatever you want to call it. I got a participation trophy for my soccer team that didn't keep score, and now I expect work to go like that. And I think when I was younger and wasn't in such serious managerial roles or didn't have the weight of a company on me, I didn't think it was as big of a deal, because I was just managing people who were almost always other millennials, although sometimes I think I did manage a baby boomer and a Gen Xer in there and a couple other, people who are older than me, which is a whole different kind of situation. But once I'm out on my own.
Yeah, well, I'm going to write that down. We ought to do that one.
What's that? Managing generations who are older than you?
Yeah, managing people older than you.
Okay, we should do it. Now that I'm out on my own, I am probably more cynical because I'm the one taking all the risk, as opposed to I'm part of a larger organization that's probably going to be okay no matter what. So if I look at having one employee.
I just want to stop you right there. That is the changing factor. There's some research on health insurance, for example, some studies on health insurance. And, the vast majority of people under 35 believe that health insurance ought to be something that is provided to everybody. Basic health insurance, everyone ought to have. But that changes once you pay your own health insurance. It doesn't go down completely, but it goes from like 67 down to under 50% once a person is paying their own health insurance, as opposed to on their parents' health insurance, or on once they get out from their parents' health insurance, then they pay for it themselves. The same thing happens when you're a business owner. When you're taking all the risk and thinking, okay, got a baby on the way, the customers aren't yelling at them, they're yelling at me. I'm the one that takes the hit. I'm the one that says, how are we going to pay for this? That's a ownership mentality, and that definitely is a game changer. And that's not as much generational as it is life stage right there.
Okay. Fair enough. By the way, I just realized for the people who watched the video, I had a piece of lint on me or something like that. I need to wear better t-shirts on this show. I'm gonna change for the next episode, even though we batch these.
Well, you know what? All right, if you do that, then I'll do that, because my admin complains that we all look the same, because we do. We'll do 3 at a time, and my admin will complain. You look like the same. It just looks like it's the same.
I guess my take on it usually is that people are trying to grow in their careers and not view our runway modeling skills, so they probably don't care. But I kind of look like a slob today, so we do about 3 episodes at a time. I'll change. No, and I would say that really is the big difference. Is that if I have time to, if I hire a 25-year-old, which I did a couple times in my last gig, right, 25-ish, and I know that I have a couple of years to really help them grow into their skill sets. And maybe, the economy was pretty good also when I hired these people. I know I've got the time and ability to help them grow into their skill set. And now if I'm looking at hiring my first employee, do I want a millennial as my first employee? My, knee-jerk reaction is that I had a lot of these kids in school, and they are honestly pretty entitled, pretty lazy, a lot of them. And
describe it for me. Okay. What do you mean by what do you mean by entitled? What comes in that word for you from teaching?
Okay, so one example of a time I got in a lot of trouble, not a lot of trouble, moderate trouble, and I just stared him down because I was teaching website coding, which is a very tough role to fill at the college level. And I had a student throw a fit because I told her she needed to redo a project, and I wasn't mean about it. I had very good ratings as an instructor. And she said, well, are you going to say anything nice about my project? And I was like, well, no, you need to redo it again. And I was like, I think you as a person have talent and you can work, and you can work in this field, be a professional, but you need to go redo this. And she was like a journalism major, which I've got quite a bit of experience in. And so she went and told the administration what I said, and I got called in, and they recapped the story. And I said, yes, I said that. I think they thought next. There was a very long, awkward silence. They told me, well, maybe try not to do that, or try to say something nice about it. So, I would say that a lot of this also is probably not just generational, but the fact that I was teaching a lot of times more affluent, kids in the Chicago suburbs. I grew up on a working farm in the second poorest county in the state. So I have a very different mentality of what it means to show up on time, put in extra time, et cetera, et cetera. So I just got a lot of, I want you to show me how to do this, and I want you to care about my feelings. And the truth is, I care about your feelings if you care about putting in good effort. And if one of those things is there, the other one probably ain't going to work. So that's where I become increasingly cynical. And in a bigger organization, there's time for somebody to grow. When it's the first employee.
Well, all right, I need to stop right here. We're going to have to rename the show.
Okay, what's the show name?
I think what's become obvious to everyone is that it needs to be called The Consultant and the Poser Millennial.
I thought you just meant the episode.
No, the whole show. Because it needs to be called The Consultant and the Traditionalist in a Millennial Body. And one of the things I said in the Sticking Points book is in the appendix on kind of the most asked questions, and is that if you grow up on a farm, and people are like, well, this doesn't really apply to me. I'm more of a different generation. And there's a lot of things that a millennial that apply to you, and there's a lot of things that don't fit. And part of it is because people who grew up around agriculture and actually work on a farm have a different kind of mindset because they're much less forgiving. And farms don't care about your feelings. And on the other hand, if you're going to motivate people today, caring about their feelings and caring about them personally often is the incentive to get them to work. But for you, they have to come with the work ethic, and then you'll care.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think that is rather insightful, because I think that's at the heart of a gap or a divide between a lot of people who would be, traditionalist managers in the past. Many of them have retired now, but boomers and even Xer managers, which are like, hey, you need to bring the hit it hard to it, and especially some of the younger millennials you had in class are saying, no, give me a reason why I should care, because I can go someplace else, especially in this market.
And I totally get that. I do totally get that. And I am very much.
Give me a reason why I should work hard.
Yes.
Give me a reason why I should work hard, which to a person who owns a business is like, why you should work hard? Because I'm freaking paying you.
Well, no, beyond that, I would say I care a lot. I have, I've got associates, I would say, in the space I'm in, digital marketing, who just, do a lot of fast talking, get a lot of new clients, and a lot of them burn real quick because these companies don't do what they say that they're able to do, right? So they don't produce results, and whatever, they just got more in the pipeline, and they move fast.
Yeah, that is a common reputation in your industry, is that people promise a lot and don't stay with you to get results.
Yeah, I care a lot, and we're at the size of a company where I pretty closely know the details of the kinds of the situations that each client is working in, right? So it's not like we're just running a lot of people through. I'm working, although I work with some other I work with some larger businesses as well, 50 plus employees. A lot of these people are 6, 7 employees, and are really taking a chance, or it's costing them something to bring me in. For a larger company, sometimes it's like, oh, we need a website. The money's not that big a deal. Let's just get it done, right? Well, if you have 6 employees, which is who I just met with this week, I mean, it's or you're a brand new business.
Significant investment.
You're making a significant investment, and I know what we do works, and I really care, and so I expect the same.
You're promising more than Wix. I saw them advertise on TV.
Yeah. By the way, the reason that Wix doesn't work isn't necessarily, it's like, oh, you can just drag things around and you'll have a website. Well, you'll have a website. You're not going to have a website that makes you any money in whatever you're doing, business to business or business to consumer, because you're just going off of gut instinct and how the website makes you feel, which doesn't mean that the website is your feelings. We go back to your feelings are not going to make a customer.
Well, no, one of the things that Seth taught me is that the problem is too much knowledge. When you design your website, you know too much about your product.
Yeah.
But you don't come at it with the ignorance of somebody who doesn't understand you or your business. And so if you design your own website, you tend to make it too complicated. You have too much information. You have too many things there. It takes too long for a person to figure it out. And they don't actually know what you do fast enough because you have the curse of knowledge. And that may be the biggest reason why doing it yourself is dangerous, because you don't come at it through a consumer. You don't come at it like you would any other website. You think you do. You think you can paint because everybody's painted until you see a professional paint. Then you're like, okay, maybe I don't. Maybe I don't know how to do some of these things.
Yeah, you're normally speaking about your own business because you're around it every day, like a level 8, kind of on the intellectual scale. And what more people buy is like a level 2. So a good example of this is go pick up a copy of USA Today or get one in the hotel next time you're traveling. And you'll notice that there's lots of pictures, lots of graphs. USA Today is written at about a 5th grade level if you compared it to a textbook, and that's about where people buy because they don't want to have to invest too much brain power into this. They get a lot of their stuff going on their lives.
I'm in hotels a lot, and you go down to breakfast, and there'll be 3 different newspapers, and I pick up USA Today because of the pretty colors.
And this is somebody who is one of the most intelligent people I've ever met. You can see the thousands of books behind him if you're watching the video. How did we get here?
It's a great. You were talking about how do you motivate people to care as much as that. I think you captured it. I think you captured a really important piece of this. Matter of fact, I should probably write this up for Huffington Post. I think you've captured a really important piece of this, and that is a lot of people, like myself, look for people who have the work ethic already, who have the killer instinct, who want to come and put extra in, and they are suspicious of people who are like, well, great, I'm done. And I won't name the company, but it's a major manufacturer of products in the not if I tell you there are not that many players, so I can't even tell you the space. All their products are on retail shelves all the time, and they got a department of 300 people that put in orders and track things for all their different customers, and they're just out of their head. So I've taught a number of classes there, and some of them are just out of their head. They're like, they leave. It's even the fourth quarter. We're trying to wrap up the last month. Everybody gives up their lunch. Everybody comes in early. Everybody works late. You hit the goal because you got to put in a lot of orders in the last month of the year. And they're like, nope, got to leave at 5. That's quitting time. And they're just so frustrated with them. Like, I've been here 20 years. That's not how we do it. And, so I asked a couple of them. I said, what's up? And they said, nobody told me that was the job. If they would have told me that was the job, I wouldn't have taken the job. I got other things. I'm going to school. And, one of them said, I play in a band. And one of them said, I don't want that kind of job right now. And so they said, they're all angry at me when I leave. And I tell them, I'm doing the job I was hired for. If you're angry at me, you need to go tell the people who told me about the job when they hired me, because they never told me about these 2 months. And I'm not coming for that. And so they were frustrated because they didn't bring that work ethic with them. They didn't bring what they consider to be a critical, willing to go above and beyond. And for them, it just wasn't the time in their life where that's what they needed to do or wanted to do, or they had other things they were committed to.
Okay, so I would actually put that on the employer. I would say that if you have not prepared somebody realistically for what the job is and you're losing a bunch of people, somebody like Hayden can come in and tell you that, but it doesn't mean it's not your fault.
That's exactly right. But their thing was, well, where do we find people who are willing to do this then? And in this market, that becomes a challenge, and that's what I help companies do. But 3 quick ideas on that. The first one is, the Ritz-Carlton literally interviews 10 times more employees than their competitors do. So they go through 10 times more people before they hire somebody. And when you're charging 2 to 3 times what your competitors charge for basically, a nicer bed and a nicer room, but most of it's service. You're making your whole business model builds on service, and so it takes them more time to find more people. And I would say that's definitely what I've experienced is having to talk to more people. Having to be fairly picky in the specifications about, hey, here's what I need and here's what it will entail at times. And here's the flexibility that comes with it. But there'll be times when, we may need to get something out the door.
Yeah. And everybody says this, right? Like, this is one of those things that's almost cliche that we hire too fast, fire too slow. Right. Right. Although maybe we don't, because as you told me, I think you've told me before that, and you don't necessarily have to either just get walked on or terminate someone. A better way to look at it is, if you just manage them and tell them every time that they're doing something wrong, usually they'll want to go somewhere else. If you just make them do their actual job, they'll want to go somewhere else. But even that, there's still a pretty big cost to the organization.
Relentless managing out. I'm writing down another topic.
Relentless managing out.
Well, let's do a topic on that.
Well, there is still a a situation where, it's still costing the organization. Like, bottom line, if you got to get rid of somebody, most of the time it's because you hired wrong. Sometimes it's because somebody's a sociopath and lied and you didn't catch it. And hey, that happens, right? But usually, honestly, it's because you hired bad or you inherited a team or an employee, because you got promoted or because nobody else could deal with that one.
Or another one, which is when the job market is as tough as it is now, people tend to grade low.
Yeah.
There's that old country and western song about by midnight, everybody in the bar's at 10. And when the job market, when you're looking at 20 candidates and the job market is, the job market has a lot, unemployment's at 7 or 8, the candidate, you got 20 candidates, you got a bigger bell curve in those candidates. And so you may hire the best of the candidates you come across in 4 months in this market and still have to fire quickly.
Okay. Fair enough.
But to your point, it's still a hiring problem, not often not a management problem. But I will tell you this, if you have what, Seth, you're describing, which is an expectation, especially with people who, like the college students you had, are newer to the world of work and production, because that's the best way to describe the life stage that those college students were at. Was, many people have accused college of being nothing else but a place where people learn to show up in appropriate clothing at an appropriate place and do things they would prefer not to do enough that they get a degree. And that employers use that to simply see that a person can show up on time in appropriate clothing and complete projects. And so it's less about what they learn and more about their ability to demonstrate to employers they can get to the right spot at the right time with the right clothes. And I know that's a fairly cynical way of looking at it, and there's actually quite a bit of research that would at least lend itself to that. And so you're there at that life stage where they're learning that. And if you hire somebody on the younger end of things, and part of what we do, to your point about I don't know if I want to hire a 25-year-old as their first full-time employee, part of what we do is we help people make the adjustments and help people figure out what kind of worker they want to be, what kind of employee they want to be. And there's a range, and you are definitely at one end of that range because you go at it like a farm boy.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've described it as, for me, work is the steak and the rest of the stuff in life is kind of the sides. Which makes you, once again, this show is now called The Consultant and the Traditionalist Masquerading as a Millennial. So,
because when I do speeches, that's how I describe traditionalists and boomers, not Xers and millennials.
Yeah. So, you talk about the difference between life stage stuff and generational stuff, right? And it probably means that by the time I add an employee, which I don't actually know is going to be in America, I think that one option that we might look at, of course, we can always add more freelancers. The problem is as far as having more of a freelancer base than I already have, the freelancers I have right now are all straight killers who basically are super talented and need no hand-holding at all. And I got them all through personal relationships, right?
Right.
One of them is my literal neighbor. Another one used to be my literal neighbor who was in a band back when I was in radio. I met him and then we kind of, reconnected 7 years later and started working together. Another one's been a good friend for over a decade. I can't replicate that. I can't just think that I'm randomly going to meet enough coders, graphic designers, project managers that I can add people. And I've had some, the non. I'm
going to interrupt you right here. For those of you who are new, who are small business owners, entrepreneurs, what Seth just said is really important because a lot of times people can kill it with the team of people they've known for 10 years. The scaling up challenge is hiring people and making the transition into people who need actual management. What Seth is saying is, I love these people because we have the relational currency that I don't actually have to manage them.
And I have
a management-free business.
That's not totally true, but they came to they came to me with advanced skill sets and rock solid work ethic and, a long history of us being able to trust each other. And I know I'm going to get beyond that point. And then I know that the next thing about hiring somebody, and like I said, it might be somebody offshore, particularly in the Philippines. I've heard really, really good things about that country in particular for offshore employees. But then you have the time zone difference, and it's, you're not working side by side with somebody, in real time. They're working overnight while you're sleeping, right?
Virtual has its challenges.
Yes, virtual has its challenges. However, if I were at a bigger organization, like I said, I don't mind developing someone so much, but I don't have that luxury, I don't think. And then also I know that when I had my first employee in the United States, the other thing is that I don't know how long it'll be until I'm able to offer health insurance and benefits and what kind of salary we'll be able to offer in a couple of years and stuff like that. And that definitely does put a question mark on the kind of employee you can get if you say, well, we've got salary, but not a lot of benefits. We got basic health insurance, no dental. When you're competing against somebody else, you've really got to buy somebody into the vision. I think that's the only thing is they really believe in where you're going and what you're doing. And also can see a big upside on future compensation and really believe in the mission. I think both those things have to be there. And then as a business owner, you better freaking deliver on that in 2 or 3 years. You better be growing the company if they're going to be.
You do have to.
Yeah.
The other piece of it is it's how are you to work with? Think about the places think about the places you've enjoyed working and the places you haven't enjoyed working. Vision makes a big difference, especially if you don't have as much to offer. And what's it like to work with you becomes the major factor in whether or not people think about leaving or think about staying. And what's it like to work with you? That becomes what most people talk about when they get home. How was your day? Yeah, well, and so you got to have a lot more money or a lot more vision to compensate somebody for not being great to work with. And so that's why, I suggest a lot of people just have to adjust, especially younger employees, regardless of the generation they are, people who are younger. And if you want more on this, I did a TED Talk called Why Half of What You Heard About Millennials Is Wrong. And by the way, I think it may have hit 100,000 this week. Who knows?
Oh, dang. Okay.
Between now or the next month, it'll probably hit 100,000 views. So that's, I looked it up the other day and went, wow, how'd it go from 60 to 90? Anyway, so look at that. But it's this idea of life stage and loyalty. If we're going to work with people who are younger, we've got to give them something that they want beyond just the job itself and beyond just the money and the benefits, to your point. And so those are really the ingredients is what do they want? And can you make that part of the offer? And a lot of people just aren't that great to work with. I'm not saying you aren't. I'm just saying a lot of people aren't that great to work with, and they need to say, here's kind of what I do. And, I'm thinking of somebody one of my kids worked for, and, they were supposed to be in a mentoring relationship, but they really weren't. They even said to me, I like people who don't need my time. That's how he described himself. And he just needed to be clear on that with folks. Really, I'll like you if you don't have much interaction with me. Well, if you're wanting to get mentored, and that's part of the compensation plan, I'm willing to come work here for less money because I'm going to get mentoring. But you don't hear the rest of that. So managers have to talk about their style and their approach pretty openly and honestly, or the first 2 or 3 staff will be the people who teach them what their style and their approach are that they're unaware of, and then they can start telling the truth. So I think you said it really well. We just need to tell the truth when we hire people. And we both know a guy named Tim Harlow, and he said to me, he goes, I can hear you talking about all my faults to people where you're trying to hire right through the ceiling tiles. I said, well, good. That way you know exactly what they know about you before they come.
Yeah, that's somebody that Hayden's done employee screening for. Hayden?
You said he won't have time. And so, yeah, he was like, dude, I can hear you putting me down. Said, no, I'm simply describing accurately what could be irritating or off-putting for other Homo sapiens.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, but I think we really came back to a hiring and motivation episode. So that's one of the things I guess I have to realize is that as I go into employee number 1 in America, in the United States, that I'm probably going to have to get somebody younger who has the potential to be a straight killer, and who has the work ethic, because I can't not deal with that, but maybe needs a lot of other pieces of the career puzzle that I actually really love. I would say that teaching people stuff is one of my greatest strengths. One of the easiest ways it is for me to land clients is just to send them screencast videos where I talk them through their website, some of their digital properties, and just show them stuff and talk to them for usually about 7 minutes. And people are freaking amazed by that. And I'm like, well, all I did was talk to you for 7 minutes on a screencast video. It's not that big a deal, but I realize it's because my ability to teach stuff is really coming through. I would say that teaching college is one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done professionally. It's also unfortunately the least profitable thing I've probably ever done per hour. So that's not something I really have, I'm going to have made my money by the time I do that. Right. So I guess that's where I've landed is that this is sort of like marriage. There is no right answer, but you dang well better know yourself before you try to know somebody else. And if you don't going in with a clear picture of yourself, then it could go very bad, because it's really bad to not find out you're perfect. You find out you're not perfect in the presence of somebody else. Like one of the reasons that, you talked about how the first year of marriage is so hard, and we kind of touched on that in another episode. I just did a lot of therapy in my 20s, and it really was the best money I spent. Same thing here. If you don't know who you are as a manager and as a business, you're going to find out, by having an employee you butt heads with because you didn't know how you were hiring or what you're hiring.
This is why getting a coach or going to a counselor, once you've had a bad hiring experience or a bad experience with an employee, you like Seth, you had a team of people who you knew had some great relational equity with, a lot of trust. You hire your first outsider, doesn't go well. This is why you need to get a coach, or you need to get some counseling. It'll be the best money you spend, because you can't blame the hires. I can't find good people. Maybe you're not finding good people, and maybe you don't know yourself well enough to know what to tell them ahead of time. Most marriages can work if people know ahead of time. And, I know a person that works with somebody who works during the night and sleeps during the day. And they said, actually, it works kind of great because I can talk to a client in the afternoon and they can have their stuff by the next morning. And I was actually surprised with your overnight thing that it worked out great. Isn't what we wanted, but they're one of our best employees. In other words, most of us can deal with most anything like we were talking about in marriage. You just have to know ahead of time what you're up for. That's really one of the biggest predictors about marital success, is not whether or not people have flaws and idiosyncrasies, but you ready for this? Whether or not the couple knows about them ahead of time. If they know about them, it's part of their deal before they move in together, before they get married. If they don't know about them and they're surprised afterwards about it, boy, that puts major problems in the relationship. So I think you've nailed it pretty well, Seth.
Okay, so how do we put a bow on this whole thing other than...
I thought I did.
That was it? Okay.
Yeah, that's the only bow I got, man.
Okay, we don't really edit these things, so that's just going to be a weird false ending that I just threw out there. So really, I guess thematically, if I can restate it, is that okay? Thematically, the thing here is you got to know who you are as a manager before you hire somebody. And if you inherit a team or you get promoted, then really it's a situation sort of like you need to basically go to marriage counseling, whatever that looks like, the business version of marriage counseling. So that is probably get a coach, find a mentor, or just straight up go to a counselor, which is probably a very underrated thing that you can do for your career.
Yeah.
Okay. By the way, this is a topic that I didn't think these episodes sometimes go a different direction than I thought they would. This is a topic that if you're struggling, you cannot make a better decision than reaching out to Hayden. Even if you don't wind up, if you guys don't wind up working together, hit him up, grab his free videos, do a quick introductory phone call to find out if this is a good fit for you. Because my gosh, I was just thinking about the pressure you face as somebody who's really leading the team and having somebody leave in the fourth quarter, like that example you gave. And like, it just made my skin crawl. So it's the middle of summer. You are going to hit the busy season, which is probably not July unless you're in like the kayak rental business. You got a little bit more relaxed schedule. Get this worked out before you are in crunch time so that it's not an emergency. PeopleDrivenResults.com. You can grab Hayden's videos on employee retention right there. And you can also set up a time to give him a call. My name is Seth Tower Hurd. If you are obviously listening to a podcast and you think, maybe my business should do this, I can get you to 10,000 total downloads in the first 3 months if you guys do the legwork, and I can help you guys get all the way set up on how to do that. You can find out more at digitalprofitfarm.com, and we will see you next week. Don't forget, you can always check out the show notes. Click through to the Consultant and the Millennial Facebook group where you can connect with other like-minded people who might be just as frustrated with the hiring process as you are, and you can crowdsource some wisdom there, probably deeper even than we went on this episode. We will see you next week.